I'm going to show you a way to use Google Earth Studio with Adobe After Effects to call out places and landmarks in a really simple way that has a very elevated look to it. Now, in order to use Google Earth Studio, you do need to apply for an account. Applying usually goes pretty quickly, and I haven't heard of anyone not getting approved, so I'd just go ahead and apply. And once you've applied, you're going to go ahead and open up a new project. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to title it Google Earth Studio times After Effects. Now you have the option to change the dimensions, duration, frame rate, etc. Again, for the purposes of this demo, I'm actually going to leave it at pretty average size so that it doesn't animate too slowly while I'm recording my screen. Okay, so once you're in Google Earth Studio, you're going to zoom in to the place or the building that you would like to start with. It is really important that this step comes first, and that is that I'm going to go ahead and set some track points. Now, track points are going to allow me to pair a layer in After Effects. This could be a text layer, a vector layer, an icon, a PNG image. It's going to allow me to track, basically to parent any of those things to this tracking point. Now, it's really important that you zoom into the building as well. Set your track point on top of the building. If you are too far out, it's going to set the track point at a super high altitude, and it's going to come out weird. So definitely zoom in as far as you can. I always try and zoom into the roof of the buildings I'm tracking, or landmarks if it's on the ground. Okay, so I'm going to use that building, and I'm also going to use the Texas Capitol here. I'm going to set my second track point. When you're setting track points, definitely go ahead and rename them specifically to what they are. When you export these layers, it would export it as track point 1, track point 2. It just makes it a lot easier once you're inside of After Effects if these layers are already titled. Now, once I've set my track points, I can modify other aspects of the map. In this case, this map is showing me everything, all landmarks, labels, roads. And I really would rather have a clean map here, so I'm gonna go ahead and change the view. Map style is what I'm looking for, and clean. Okay, now once it's the style I want, I'm gonna go ahead and save it really quickly. Once it's the style I want, now I'm gonna start changing the camera position here. And you'll notice this timeline below, it looks a lot like an After Effects or Premiere Pro timeline. And it's gonna work very similarly. We're gonna set starting keyframes and ending keyframes so that this camera animates around the space. So just dropped all of my keyframes here. Now when I move, after I've dropped keyframes and then I move that timeline toggle again, you're gonna notice it's gonna reset the camera. So make sure that you navigate all the way to the end and then drop new keyframes, rather than setting keyframes and then trying to zoom into the space that you want. So I'm gonna just keep it very simple here, maybe rotate the camera just a little bit. And then I'm gonna drop my end keyframes. Okay, cool. I'm gonna hit spacebar just so that I can preview this animation, and this looks good. It's nice and simple, not doing anything wacky with the camera. I think I like this as is. Okay, gonna go ahead and save it again. Now the next step is gonna be to render this project out. We're gonna go to render, and you have two different options here at the top. You have image sequence or video. The difference is that image sequence is gonna render out those track points and camera, so that you would be working in a 3D space inside of After Effects. If you render it out as an MP4, you will not get the track points, and you'll be working in a 2D space. So go ahead and render this out as a JPEG sequence. Make sure the 3D tracking data is set to After Effects, JSX. Everything is set to high quality here, and then go ahead and hit save and render. Now, while this is rendering out, it's really important that you do not leave this screen or work in other apps. It could mess up the render. So make sure that nothing else is running on your computer. If you need to hit pause and close other apps, go ahead and do so. After you have rendered out your project, you're going to open After Effects, go to File, Scripts, Run Script File, and you're going to go to the folder where you saved your project and select the script file. And then hit open. And that's going to import your JPEG sequence, camera, track points, and text layers, which will be the track point labels. As you can see, those are massive and kind of obnoxious and in the way. What I do like to use these for at the very beginning is just to make sure that my track points did render out correctly. It's not uncommon for track points to render out incorrectly, especially if you maybe set the track point at too high of an altitude or try to add track points after you had already adjusted the camera and added keyframes. So always check before you get too far into your project that those text layers are staying put as the video animates. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down just so I can see what's going on here, and then I'm going to test it. And it does look like it's staying on top of the building there. So that looks good to go to me. Okay, then I'm going to add a location pin. And that's how I'm going to go ahead and mark my building here. Once I have added my location pin, I'm going to switch it to a 3D layer by clicking that blank box underneath the cube. And then I'm going to parent it to the 111 Congress layer because I want it to track to the top of that building. Now, as you can see, it disappeared. And if you look in your position attributes, you'll see the coordinates are way crazy high. So I'm going to go ahead and just zero those out so I can see the pin on the screen. And after I've set the position, I'm going to go ahead and hit R so that I can adjust the orientation and rotation. Zero out the Z-axis, and then I'm going to set the X-axis to 90. And as you can see, the anchor point was in the middle of the shape. I'm going to move that down to the bottom of the shape. And the reason for that is I want this to animate in and scale up, but I want it to scale up from the bottom. So I went ahead and moved that anchor point down to the bottom. Now I'm going to adjust the pin to the top of the building. And my anchor point didn't follow, so I'm just going to drag that back to the bottom of the pin there. I'm going to save. And just check that it is tracking to the building, and it is. That looks great. Okay, it looks a little big, so I'm going to scale that down. That is much better. Okay, I'm going to lock this layer for the time being, and now I'm going to move over to the text layer. That is the Texas Capitol label. As you can see, we can't see it, so I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Oh, that's right. I actually went ahead and animated this. So I'm going to delete all the animations for now. We'll get to that later. I can't see it because it adjusted the opacity down to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and change that back to 100 by clicking T and then typing in 100, enter. Okay, great. Now we can see it. Okie dokie. So right now this is centered on the Capitol. I'm going to go ahead and move it to the right side here. I'm going to do a flag style marker. So I'm going to adjust it up, and I'm going to draw a box around this shape, around this type. So I'm going to do new shape layer. First thing I'm going to do is draw the rectangle. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw a line down to the roof of the Capitol. As you can see, the anchor point kind of ended up in the middle of the page here. I'm just going to move that back to the middle of the box for now. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and draw my line with that shape layer still selected. I'm going to hit shift so that it goes straight. Oh, looks like we're a little off here, so I'm going to move that rectangle by selecting rectangle. And then I'm going to nudge it over. Now I'm going to go ahead and adjust the text. Move the anchor point down to the bottom corner here. And that's going to allow me, once I turn this into a 3D object, it's going to make it much easier to get back into that original position. So I'm going to zero out the position attributes. I hit P, go to the position, and zero out X, Y, and Z. Now you can see the rotation's all funky. So now I'm going to select the layer, hit R, and zero out the Z, and set the X-axis to 90 degrees. Okay, it looks like it shrunk just a wee bit, so I'm going to go ahead and increase the scale here and adjust this rectangle back to the way I would like it to appear. Do that by selecting the rectangle layer, rectangle path. Once I have that bounding box, use my selection tool to increase the width. The reason it's scaling like this is the actual anchor point of the sub layer is still in the middle of the shape. I could move this over to the right side. That'd probably be the easier way to scale this, but you can, you know, just scale it and nudge it. Now, once I have everything looking the way I want, I do want to move the text layer in front of the shape layer so that it's not adding that opacity to the text itself. That's just going to give me a nice clean label. Once I've fine-tuned the size and position, okay, I think that looks good. All right, gonna zoom out here so we can see everything together now, and then just do a little preview, see how it's tracking. One thing I'm noticing right off the bat is that line is coming over those buildings. So in the next phase of this project, I'm gonna show you how to do a very simple path animation so that we're not overlapping. Next, we're going to add some super basic animations to the location marker and the Texas Capitol callout. I'm going to go ahead and start with the Texas Capitol callout here, and I think I want it to animate fully in by second 4. So I'm going to go ahead and select both the shape layer and the text at the same time. Hit T, which will open this opacity box. I'm going to drop a keyframe at the 4-second point. I'm going to go back a second or two here and drop another keyframe and change it to 0% opacity. So that will just basically allow this to fade on. Now what I've just done is made sure I have all those points selected at once, and I hit F9. That's going to ease this opacity in, and it just gives it a little extra drama. A little bit more interesting than just having static keyframes here. Now what I've done is I've gone ahead and hit Control C. I'm going to Control V that at the end of my animation here so that I can animate out the exact same way. But just keep in mind that that has put the 0% in front of the 100%. So I'm going to go ahead and switch the order of these so that it stays at 100% throughout the duration up until this point, and then it's going to fade off the screen here. All right, I'm gonna lock those for now. And then I'm gonna go ahead and animate the location pin next. So I want that to animate on before the call out box. But before that 4-second point. I think I want to animate it on just a little bit differently, just a little bit more interestingly here. So I'm going to have it scale up and kind of bounce onto the screen. Okay, so with the location pen selected, I'm going to go ahead and hit S for scale. And as you can see, it's at 64% scale. I'm going to go ahead and drop a pin. That's where I want to end up. So I've nudged that forward because in order to have this bounce effect, I need to overshoot that 64%. So I'm gonna come back to that, and first I'm gonna add this initial 0% scale. Now, as you can see, it's scaling up from the bottom there because where we set our anchor point earlier. I'm gonna hit 80, I think, to start. And I'm just gonna test this to see if that's too dramatic. No, I think that looks good. You might need to adjust these to be a little bit closer together. I have a feeling this is gonna be a little bit too slow. First, I'm gonna make sure I select them all and ease them so that they have a little bit more of a natural look. And yeah, this is way too slow. So I'm gonna try and nudge these a little closer together. Still too slow, and I think I want it to start sooner, so I'm gonna pull those back. If you're having a hard time seeing the real distance here, you can adjust your scale of the timeline. So I'm gonna basically zoom in a little bit so that I can get a little more precise. That's still a little slow. So I'm gonna move both those back. Okay, that is much better. I like that little dramatic bounce. You could totally just fade this on, similarly to how we did the text box. This is just another fun way you can do it. At the end of the day, you should do whatever you like and whatever is visually pleasing for the animation that you're working with. Okay, so we still have the problem of that line over the building in the back here. So next we're going to look at how to very simply animate the line. Okay, first I'm actually going to go ahead and animate this location pin out as well. I'm going to fade it off. I'm going to fade it off later than the text box. So I'm going to hit T for transparency, drop a keyframe at 100, go forward a few frames, and then scale that down to 0%, and drop another keyframe. Then, all right, I like the timing of that. Okay, so now let's move on to the line that is crossing over the building. There's a very simple way to edit this line so that it looks like it's falling behind the building rather than coming over the front of it there. As you can see, the Capitol building is behind this tall building. So first I'm going to lock the location pin, unlock the shape layer, drop down the contents, and select the line path. So shape 1, that's the line. I'm going to select the path, and then I'm going to toggle a keyframe onto the screen. This is going to be our starting keyframe. Now I'm going to go forward until we're probably at our max height, or max building height there, so about right here. What I want to do is I want to adjust this have the whole thing selected, so you need to make sure that you have your path selected, and then I'm going to adjust that to the top of the building. Go forward another few frames. As you can see, we're going to need to drop another keyframe as we zoom in. So once I'm at the edge, I'm going to go ahead and drop another keyframe and adjust. And it will automatically drop a keyframe if you adjust the path. Once you have a keyframe on the screen, if you are going forward in time and want to adjust the path again, it will automatically drop another keyframe when you make that adjustment. Now what I want it to do as it passes this building is immediately drop back down onto the top of the Capitol. So I dropped a second keyframe on that final spot just to hold it to the edge of where I think this is going to drop down. Oh, make sure I have only the path selected now. Sometimes this is a little tricky. It wants to select everything. Oh, we still have everything selected. Okay. Click out, select path. It's gonna give me all kinds of trouble today. Okay. I'm gonna try it by double clicking. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now I'm gonna like draw this all the way back down to where the top of the Capitol is. And ideally this is gonna shoot back down as if it's being, as you can see, it's a little bit slow to come down. I really want it to look like it's revealing behind the building. So that second keyframe that I dropped, I'm gonna nudge just a little bit closer here. First, I'm just checking the rest of the keyframes to make sure it stays over the top of the building. And then right about there, I want it to shoot down. So and drag that end keyframe closer so that it really looks like it's just being revealed. Okay. All right, hit spacebar to preview this. That looks so much better. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that.